Okay, so perfect. First module as part of the DP200, Azure for the data engineer. Chris?
Yeah, so Azure for the data engineer. This is a high level really that sets up the theme for the course, and there's 4 core topics. The evolving world of data, surveying the services of the Azure data platform, identifying the tasks that are performed by a data engineer, and important to all of the course is describing the use cases for the cloud in a case study. This is really, really important.
Okay, so what I want us to do here is and I know we're not going to go through every single slide in the presentation. Let's have a quick overview of each of these slides, each of these lessons maybe, and then really see where it's relevant for us to drill down.
Exactly.
I understand what I would look at this is there's going to be 2 things that are kind of crucial to know is the services in the Azure data platform and how we wrap that case study and the use cases around that. So
exactly, we can do
if you want to lead us through that, that would be really nice to do.
So let's start off with the first lesson, and in the first lesson what we're looking at is the evolving world of data. And to be fair, I think a lot of our trainers will be very comfortable with this content. From a lesson objective perspective, we know about the abundance of data with new platforms and social media and sensors and all that. Our MCTs will probably know the difference between on-premise and cloud data technologies just from doing Azure fundamentals, right? So there is a little bit of repetition there with the Azure fundamentals.
Yeah, I still might be within that comfort zone where I come from this traditional relational world and this scary NoSQL, Cosmos DB might
Well, this is where the third objective might be worth having a little look at, really. Let's move to the third one, because here, the job responsibilities, right? A big question is, what is the difference between a database administrator and a data engineer, right? And what we try and encapsulate in this module, that the fact that, it's new skills for new platforms. Now, obviously, at this point, you haven't gone through the platforms yet. What you're doing is you're opening up that mindset shift that we've been talking about, that you need to make sure that you've got an open mind to these new technologies, but also implementing to provisioning.
Okay,
that's a really
sense.
good point, isn't it, really? You think you're not getting on your hands and knees anymore in a data center and changing your loading approaches.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I see what you mean by that.
ETL to ELT.
You're provisioning the services. You're not going to have to set up spin-off infrastructure.
Exactly.
Go through lengthy install processes and command line setup.exes and
exactly. And that's big, right? And the only other thing I would say about this slide, we've provided some examples. Hey, if you've got your own, feel free to make use of your own.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the evolution I want to get with the curriculum as well, is where we now have a case study that's specific around the common scenario. I don't see any reason on why we would not be able to adjust those with things like retail, healthcare, finance, you name it. I believe there's a lot of opportunity to apply the knowledge around service usage and then really data engineering a solution together, given a set of these requirements, and then understand every step that we've done. How do I provision data lake store? How do I provision Cosmos DB? How do I scale it? I think there's some good content in there.
Cool. So let's move on to what the review questions look like. I just want to let you know that when you come to review questions, you can leave that screen up, and it is a build slide. This is standard for all our review questions, where you bring up each answer as you go through it, okay? So I just wanted to set that this is what we've done really with regards to the review questions.
And it's kind of like knowledge checks, the way we put them on Learn as well?
Exactly.
Okay.
So second module, this really is an important module for me. Now, I've got to be honest.
Lesson within the module.
Sorry, lesson. I've got to be honest with you. In the student materials, there's basically a page for each of the technologies. We have not done that for each page. There's a slide. We've kind of taken all the technologies that you go through at a high level, and we've developed them into what we call the build slide, right? So structured versus non-structured data, I expect you to understand that. But basically, this slide is really representation of those individual pages. So you talk about Azure storage, data lake storage, Databricks, Cosmos DB, SQL database, SQL data warehouse. You'll notice that we've used logos rather than actually calling out the names. Let us know how you feel about that. It'd be good to have feedback on that.
Yeah, I might need some clarification on that.
Okay. But what a lot of people have said is extremely beneficial is the 2 slides that you're about to look at. They just love the 5 bullet points with the 5 key points that differentiate each of those technologies, which is key to the exam.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Key. So the next slide really goes through stream analytics and data factory. And you'll notice in the arrows, we've got which modules they belong to.
That makes sense.
I always get the question, well, what about HD Insight? HD Insight is alive and kicking as a product technology. It's just not part of the certification objectives. So we acknowledge its existence, but we call out the fact that we're not covering it on this course because it's not part of the exam objectives, and the same for Azure Data Catalog. It's there, it's alive and kicking, it's just not part of the exam objective.
That makes sense. Okay.
So let's go to module 3.
Yeah, I was going to try to answer those questions.
Well, you're going to know, I can give you a break.
Not as fast as you just did, but...
Listing the new roles of modern data projects, you know, there's a massive shift, right, within industry at the moment. You know, outline the data engineering practices, explore the high-level processes for architecting a data engineering project. That's the slide I just want to have a look at here, the final one. So we're just going to shift through these 2 slides. Can we
pause on this for a second? Walk me through this.
It's not the details that you're seeing in the grids that I'm interested in. It's the titles at the top. Source, ingest, prepare, analyze, consume.
Okay.
You know, at the end of the day, what are your source systems? How are you going to ingest them? And that's why I've deliberately put an IoT hub in there, because that's new. You're not teaching IoT hubs on this course. You don't need to know it. What you're setting up here is the fact that data can come from news sources, not applications, but maybe devices. And that raw data is ingested by new technologies like IoT hubs. And then they can be prepared in different ways. Some of that data may be ingested and analysed straight through a technology like stream analytics. You may do some modifications to that through Azure Functions and just store it in data lakes.
And we got some Azure reference architectures that we could point to as well. Right?
Absolutely. But the key point here is you could quite frankly put your own version in. You could replace this with your own version. But you talk about source, ingest, prepare, analyze, consume. And on the side, storage and processing.
And I would want, like, when you say your own version, I would assume you're saying, look at our reference architectures and then apply them to a use case scenario that you're familiar with.
Yeah, so the original version of this actually had the entire architecture for the case study. But I felt like I was giving you the answer. And I didn't want to do that. So I've given you one that's different.
Okay.
Would you like to do these questions?
No.
Okay, let's move on.
I passed the exam.
Exactly. I do want to spend some time on this.
Me too. This is basically the foundation across our data and AI curriculum.
Of them. All of our courses.
So let's spend some time on this.
We've only got one objective. It's that important. Read the course case study. We actually advise you during this particular section to give them 10 minutes, right? Now, there's 1 or 2 ways you can do this. You can take the silent approach where you ask the students to spend 10 minutes reading the case study. Or the alternative is, as a group, you walk through the case study yourself. Why is that? Because the case study is used in the labs across the entire course. And what we've got in the case study is the overarching story of AdventureWorks and how it's modernising and the requirements that are in there.
And when you say modernising, you're saying there's a new set of data requirements that come in. Some of them might be structured, might be some, like you mentioned earlier, sentiment analysis coming out of that as well. So I wouldn't necessarily know on how to go about this and say, hey, students, go read this, or walking through it. I'm kind of trying to gauge what your recommendation there would be.
Just repeat that again so I understand that.
Yeah, so when I look at this, it's like you say, allocate 10 minutes to read through, spend 10 minutes walking through. I'm kind of looking at like, what do you think the best feel is from a student perspective?
I think it's better to probably do it as a group. I think
kind of like a walkthrough?
Yeah, so what I would do is, it's your opportunity to go through different parts of that case study. Just to give you a heads up, right, there are elements of that case study that are not used in this course at all.
Okay.
The customer service
because
aspect,
they belong in the,
it belongs in the
AI engineering, and
I think
that makes sense.
I think the only way we get involved with that particular requirement in the case study is we build Cosmos DP, the AI course could potentially use to store conversation history.
Exactly.
But we don't do full-on AI engineering. So, and that's what you will get in a real world, right? In the real world, if you're sat down with stakeholders in a business, they will tell you everything that they want.
Yeah, makes sense.
You will know that, well, this part of my team will do this part, and these developers will do this part. So, I actually do it as a group, I would say.
Okay.
So that is the actual case study itself. So much so that the review questions here are based on content in the case study.
Okay.
So they have to have read the case study to answer these questions, right? But we won't go into that.
And then there's a lab.
The lab. The lab basically has a lab overview and objectives. So the case study that you've just read gives you the overarching business case requirements of the business. The lab overview is telling you what we're trying to get out of this particular lab for this particular module, which is then articulated as objectives. But then to drill down into a specific scenario, we have the scenario that just gives you a little bit more information to help you out with the lab. So this is designed to supplement the case study as well.
It's kind of like, almost feel like a sub-part extracted, go
exactly,
implemented. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair.
So you got to read through this. You've got to understand it, right? And, you know, most of the time, the objectives that you have in the course will have an individual objective within the lab. Occasionally we deviate from that, and there's an example that I'll go through later. But by and large, you'll find that there's a one-to-one map.
Fair. That looks good.
And then the lab review is your way for closing it out. These are deliberately open-ended. The objective here is not to have a binary answer. There's no right or wrong answer here.
It's like an enabler thinking.
Perfect. Yeah, it enables a conversation where you're trying to apply the learnings from the lab to there. Remember when we looked at the module 0 where we're introducing the course, they should feel that they can apply their knowledge to their environments. That's what this does.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, and then wrapping up with a module summary, and something that we've introduced into the data engineering courses is after the course. So there's a link there for your students to consider visiting the Microsoft Customer Case Study site.
That makes sense.
Go and search out other people in the same industry, how they've done it. You know, and that really is them to. It's helping you to show responsibility as a trainer about reinforcing the learning after the events. Right?
Perfect.
There's the responsibility.
Okay, no, I think this really clarifies a lot, and let's go have a look at the next module.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.